All right, being 7 o'clock, I call the Lisle Library District Board meeting for February 12th, 2020 to order. Roll call, please.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Here.
Thomas Duffy.
Here.
Thomas Homer.
Here.
Karen Larson.
Here.
Jenny Norton.
Here.
Liz Sullivan.
Here.
Emily Swistek.
Here.
All right, next item on the agenda is opportunity for visitors to speak. If a visitor would like to speak, just please come to the microphone and speak, and you will have 5 minutes. Are there any visitors that are willing to speak?
Actually, I have nothing to say about, you don't even have to turn that.
Okay.
But I was reading this acknowledgement, and I just wanted dedicated to all librarians who are listening. It says, this book is dedicated to all librarians everywhere, for they are the true keepers of the secret flame and not to be trifled with. And I just thought that was so appropriate. It's from the Rivers of London series. So, that's it. All right.
Any other visitors wanting to speak? All right. Next item on the agenda is there's the assignments for reviewing monthly account payable. This month, Trustee Duffy and myself review the January billings in February, and then next month, Secretary Swistek and Trustee Sullivan will review the February billings. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
Motion is second. Any questions, comments, or discussion in regards to the consent agenda? A roll call, please.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Emily Swistek.
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Aye.
Thomas Duffy.
Aye.
Karen Larson.
Aye.
Jenny Norton.
Aye.
Thomas Homer.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is committee reports. Is there any finance committee?
No update.
No update, okay. Personnel and policy.
We're meeting next Friday.
The February 21st at 6 p.m.
Alrighty, physical plan. No report. Okay. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business, discussion of facility options, CCS update and discussion.
So we have Mark Rogers here from CCS, and I know he's got a kind of a topic list for us.
Right,
Yeah?
brought a bit of a cheat sheet, I guess.
Okay.
Walk through the discussion, so I'll pass those out here.
Thank you.
Hopefully helps with your notes. Save one heading here, so I saw you.
Watch the chords. Thank
I
you.
got those already.
Yeah, are good?
Anything I left over, I'll just put up on the table. Right here.
Do you want to talk at maybe speak at the mic, maybe?
That would be best if you could, please.
So it's been a couple months since I was here, but obviously a few things have happened since. So Flirty and Collins, I want to start there with an update since we had some discussions with them the last meeting. They did meet with the EDC this morning. The EDC, they didn't meet, sorry, they gave a presentation to the EDC that was discussed at EDC. Essentially what the whole process is, they said this is how much our funding gap is, this is how much we'd like to request from the village, and now it's up to the EDC to determine if that funding gap could be met with some sort of village incentive to the developer. From what I've heard secondhand is that there was a comment that $7 million or something like that could be supported by the TIF if the TIF was bonded by the village. I believe the number that the developers asked for is 14 million. So there's a gap there. The next step for that process is for the village consultant to go and do more analysis on the preliminary findings. They might have more questions for Flirty and Collins, and then probably some back and forth. And I'd expect at least one more meeting with the EDC to happen before we really hear anything substantive. Any questions on that or anything else that I missed? I know some of you might have been actually at that EDC meeting this morning.
We were there, and I have some notes in my director's report, unless you want to talk about that now.
Did Flirty and Collins actually present?
I believe they did not. I wasn't there myself. They gave the information, and since it was preliminary analysis just done, they didn't make the trip up since they're not local.
Right.
If I correct, because I got there late at the meeting this morning, I just as a spectator, but I think they were, if I'm not mistaken, they didn't come, they're waiting for the village consultant, the TIF consultant came to Kenna to do their analysis.
Well, they did preliminary
Well, yes,
analysis.
yes, yes.
And so due to that analysis, there's more discussion that needs
Okay.
to happen.
Gotcha.
Right. So I'd expect some back and forth between the village consultant and Buddy Collins to figure out how to complete the financial analysis on the TIF and what the village can, with whole or offer basically, in terms of bonding and from there.
So they want 14 million for the parking garage
Yes.
and we can only afford, the village can only afford to give them 7 million?
They are asking for 14 million, and it'd be premature to say that that's the hard number.
Well, I know.
Understanding.
I'm just saying.
That is their initial ask, and I know it's just verbal at this point. There's been no formal or final analysis done by the village's TIF consultant, and the preliminary numbers have come back as about $7 million. So there's a gap there. And usually that's typical with any development. You'll see a gap back and forth, and there's some negotiations. It usually doesn't happen the first time, first go around. Just like if the developer would come back to the library and want to start negotiations, there'd be some back and forth. That's the process that's going through right now.
Like how long is the process going to take?
I would expect it at least be another month or two for this to go back and forth between the two entities. Because there's really three parties that are at play here, or two for this process. It's the village itself, it's the village board. Because similar to how the PZC acts on any zoning, it's a recommendation that then goes to the board. So there has to be an EDC meeting with an EDC recommendation, and then that goes to the village board, and the village board will make a judgment call what can or can't be done.
Okay, and then what happened with the remediation for the gas station and the dry cleaners?
So talk to the village about that. It's private property right now, so there are no public records of any NFR being issued or anything like that. The latest information I saw, I'd seen is a couple of years old, and this is coming from the village as well. According to a newspaper article, and this is at least 2 or 3 years old, soil remediation was completed, and they put monitoring wells in the ground that had to be monitored for a while. There's been no reports since then, at least publicly available, and since it's a private land, there's no way to go and really get any more information right now. Now, if there is a deal made with the library or the village or someone of that nature, at that point, that would be part of due diligence and going and actually figuring out what the processes are there.
So it's not free and clear?
We don't have.
I mean, in
Yeah.
terms of like remediation, it's not been, the village doesn't know.
They don't have any public record of anything right now, no.
Vice President Bartelli has a question.
Right. I don't want to go too far into the economic development meeting, which I attended this morning, but after the meeting adjourned, I asked Mike Smentana, I don't know if that's pronounced correctly, about the remediation. He indicated to me that the village had sent an email to the powers that be that would handle that, and they have received no response. So his response to my question about remediation is it's ongoing.
Okay.
Those were his words. So it has not been
Fully
decided.
resolved.
And I have another question. You mentioned the 7 million out of the TIF fund. At the meeting, I may be mistaken. Is that the money that Flaherty and Collins wants up front?
I could not tell you since I was not
I
there.
thought it was a bigger amount. I thought it
Flaherty and Collins
almost
wants
involved the
14.
entire TIF amount.
Well, Flaherty wants 14.
Well, that's the
14.
initial ask.
So I think it's important that we know that. That's the
Yes.
entire TIF fund.
Well, no, the TIF fund is not funded by, there isn't 14 million in the TIF or anything like that.
Right, there's 14 million out of an original 17 million in the TIF fund. It's
The
my understanding.
TIF was
No.
originally budgeted for like just over 17 million.
Right.
But already 5 years have
Pass.
passed, so
It
instead
goes
of
So I
23,
think
it's
maybe-
18 years.
I'll
Let's
jump
let
ahead.
Mark give us an
Okay.
overview.
I'll jump ahead into the village agenda
Okay.
because TIF district at a high level. So the way the TIF works is that they do an analysis on what the taxable income is for the TIF region at a certain time. I think it's 2014 is what this one was based off of. So any taxes that are over and above that, over the time period that TIF is active, that gets put into an account essentially. That account then can be used for certain improvements, whether it be public improvements or incentives or things like that. Right now, there's there's insufficient money for this development in the fund right now. So what would happen is they would bond on the TIF itself on the right. What they would do is that's what McKenna is doing right now. They're doing an analysis to make sure that whatever money is going to come in from the TIF over time would pay back any of the debt over that bond. So that's where they're coming up with, I think verbally it was, I don't think there's anything in writing right now that said, okay, we think that the TIF, based on this development, can fund a bond issuance of $7 million. Now, that's preliminary, that's verbal, it's not written, and that's what the analysis is going back and forth right now to see if that's an accurate statement or if there's something else to it.
Isn't it true that TIFs are generally not a good idea when you have residential development?
What do you mean by not a good idea? And we've seen TIFs, and we've been involved, CCS has been involved in projects that have been funded by TIFs, residential, non-residential, across the board. I think it really depends on the taxable area they're looking at. So if the taxes are going to start at using crazy numbers at $1, right? That's what the tax income is today. And because of a development, whether it be residential or whatever else, the taxes are going to be $10 later. There's $9 extra in there that would go to the TIF fund that can be used for paying back a bond, or that can be used directly upfront costs. So really, I don't know if it matters much if it's residential or not. I know that the current TIF did call out residential properties in there. As part of it's like a 50-page public document.
Right.
They do call it residential there.
I guess where I'm coming from is there's a movement in certain states, maybe it's happened in Illinois, I don't really know, but the ones I'm familiar with are in Florida, where instead of allowing a residential area to use TIF money, they're actually charging the developer to develop there, and they're charging them impact fees. And the rationale is that that developer is going to develop residential, which is going to bring in people who are going to use Park District, library, and schools. So we're going to charge them an impact fee because they're going to make money over the development, and they're going to tax, not tax money tax, but they're going to utilize our resources.
So I think the biggest thing to think about there is the supply and demand, though. So where is their supply and demand? If I'm guessing right in Florida, and where they're looking at doing that, they have a high demand for residential to be developed, and they have the economic constraints set up that they don't need more residential, or if they are needing more residential, they don't need the commercial, whatever it might be. It's maybe a little bit different than what's here in Lisle, and I can't speak to it without having done the analysis on myself, but I would guess that since it's been vacant for how many years, there isn't the impetus to put anything else there. So TIFs have been used in the past successfully to drive residential development, or just development in general, to spur economic incentives and economic growth in the area. If you're going to charge developers something to move into a downtown area just because they're using libraries more, they might go look at other communities, and if you're trying to attract them, why would they come if you're going to charge them and not give any incentive?
Well, normally though, if there's a residential development though, you get impact, like the curious, in a TIF, would it still get impact fees?
I don't know.
Yeah, you have
to do a bunch of research on that to see how it works out.
That's what I was going to add.
Okay.
And the experience with the village of Lisle, from what I understand, lived here 30 years. TIFs have mainly been provided for corporate development. This is new.
Yeah, well,
Residential.
98 corridor is developed
So
that way,
that's
right?
why there's so
Yeah.
many questions, and yes.
Right. And I think it speaks to the changing economics of the
Sure.
western corridor, whether there's residential moving in or corporate entities moving out of the city or vice versa. It's constantly evolved for the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and it's going to continue to do that. And so it's trying to find the next thing to get in here.
And I know we're peppering you with these questions, but I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to educate myself here.
These are all fair questions. I'd say shoot away. And
Okay.
if we don't know the answer, then we'll go do some research and find it for you. I think that's the key.
My question is, I read somewhere, and I don't remember where, that the apartments that were tipped by Lisle on Warrenville Road, actually declined
There-
in value.
If there were no apartments, are you talking about Navistar or something?
No, I'm talking about as you go,
Next to DuPage
East?
Medical Group.
yeah, next, as you go east towards Downers Grove.
Avant.
Yeah, but they weren't
Arboretum,
TIF.
those.
Oh, yeah,
South
I'm
side.
pretty sure they were.
No, there's only two TIFs in Lisle, the Navistar and then UTI.
And downtown.
Yeah, and then downtown 3, yeah. Yeah, there's only-
There's 3
Yeah,
TIFs.
yeah,
Yes.
there's the
It's,
Okay, so
Yeah.
maybe I'm wrong, but
Yeah.
had they been TIF'd and their value decreased over time, what would have happened, because they were apartments,
yeah.
and building the apartments on their property actually decreased the EAV.
Well,
And the tip
Yeah.
is there's the EAV now and there's the EAV anticipated.
the
So
one
the TIF,
Is-
let me just make
Okay,
sure I
okay.
understand this, guys. So the TIF is the difference between the anticipated EAV and the current EAV. So that's how it can be funded, that's how it could be bonded. So
True.
had that been TIF, we'd be in a world of hurt.
So, well, the village would be maybe in a world of hurt if they bonded it up front, but we're not the village. But the thing here is, the one thing I'll say, the example would be the Navistar TIF. Those first few years, in theory, if I'm not mistaken, if I recall correctly, the EAV did drop on that property, but that actually wound up being a good thing for the taxing bodies, because that actually kept their EAV artificially high. And that's a pay-as-you-go TIF, as the other two are currently, are pay-as-you-go, so there was no money for them to take out. So the only one that lost would have been Navistar, because there was no tax increment to fund them. The governing bodies probably made out pretty good those first few years, because that froze their EAV a lot higher, because if there was no TIF on that property and their EAV dropped, I mean, that would have just shifted the tax burden on all the other residents. That could happen eventually with this TIF, although I would probably doubt it, if
That's
it's,
why you
because it's
have a
such a big,
consultant looking at it.
this, and the consultant
That's-
look at.
That's their
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
McKenna's job is to look at that and maybe call on and make a recommendation to the village board for consideration. So
Right,
you have to look
but-
at each individual property, and if it becomes a real opportunity for the village board to consider based on what McKenna's findings are, then that's what you have to make a decision based off of. Not you, the village board.
But I also want to just kind of keep it relevant, at least as far as the TIF discussion goes, to this downtown TIF, if possible, so.
But I'm trying to understand.
Mm-hmm.
You said that Navistar went down in EAV during the first year.
First couple of years.
So how did that impact the library? Because we were part of that TIF.
That really, if anything, it benefited us, because we got what, TIF surplus funds.
We
which
get, we
still get-
receive
yeah.
TIF surplus
Yeah.
every year. That's in the audit every year. I don't have those numbers
It's
at
like
hand,
45,000.
but yeah.
Okay, so including the first couple of years where the EAV was below, so the anticipated EAV dropped below the established EAV when the development happened. And I'm hating to bring
Yeah.
this up, but I asked, and you know this,
The
Tom.
TIF consultant,
I
yeah.
sent you
Yeah.
guys an email and I said, please have a TIF consultant come to the meeting so I can get these
I-
questions
I-
answered, and you turned me
Well,
down.
I said we could bring in a TIF consultant. I have no problem.
No,
bringing
you
in-
told me the TIF is gonna go away,
Well, I
it's a
didn't
dead
say-
issue.
I didn't say, no, I
You said it's a moot point.
I said it's a moot point at this time. I have no problem bringing in a TIF consultant down the road if, let's see what the TIF, the village, the consultant does, and if there's a TIF on the table. If this project blows up because of the financing doesn't work, then why bring in a TIF
Yeah.
consultant? I'd rather get to the point that it's legit one way or the other, then we could bring in a TIF consultant. I'm not gonna bring in a TIF consultant just for discussion purposes if this project blows up in a month or two or three.
And I agree, as long
Yeah.
as it's okay that we don't understand any of the TIFs we're involved in today. So that's okay. I'm okay going and being involved in a couple of TIFs and not understanding what we're involved in. That's appropriate
So my
for a
recommendation
trustee.
really would be to, right now, you're not making a decision based on any TIF or anything.
That's
Really,
true,
there's
too.
nothing there. There's no decision to be made at that point. So really, once there's a decision to be made, if you need more information, I think at that point it'd move the board to find out all of those different nitty-gritty details and do the due diligence. But until that point, I think you need to my recommendation would be let that process play out between the two parties that it's privy to, the village and the developer, and then go from there.
Trustee Duffy.
Mark just stole my comment. Because that's the thing I think we're getting TIFs, that's down the road, and we're not actually part of, that is the village board to the developer. For me, our role as the board is to think about it as, is this the location that meets the needs? Is this what we want? We, as the board, have no play in the TIF. The TIF is between two different entities. So whatever they decide impacts us down the road. So if they decide not to do financing, then our options become very clear. But at the end of the day, they can decide whatever they want. We don't have a say in that process as a board. I think is that a correct way to look at it now, like at this point? I know it's a very simplistic.
No, we have a minimal say. I mean, there's the joint review board, which I think will address it.
Yeah, I'll address that. We are members of the joint review board, but we are advisory members. We don't have any real authority, but we do attend because we do receive benefit from surplus.
So, I mean, so in theory, you're right. I mean, all the library and all the other governing bodies could say, no, we don't like this TIF in the village.
They could still move forward with it. Or
Historically,
dissolve.
at least in Lisle, going back almost 20 years, I know the village has taken into account. I think the school district, the downtown, like, what was it, 2002? And I think the library was opposed to it too at the time. I don't know, but we have
right now we don't
we have a
focusing
minimal say.
as much on this
Correct.
versus
Because the only part of, if any, and not to cloud it up more, if there
It's
is
very
any,
cloudy right now.
any part of the TIF funding that might affect us would maybe be with the parking, and that's indirectly, I would argue, and I mean, that might be an incorrect statement.
Can't we vote not to participate? I thought that was
You're
part
talking
of.
about the TIF, that TIF vote was taken in 2014 or so.
But even if the library voted no,
That's true.
they would still
Wouldn't matter,
move,
yeah.
they could still move forward.
Yeah, and I think the board, the library board, at that time voted 5-2 to approve the TIF. Okay.
Okay, I thought when I read the 100-page, 2014 document, which I do have, and I got through most of it, I thought that each district, each taxing district, had the ability to turn down participation.
Well, the board could vote no, but they at the end of the day, the village could go ahead and pretty much do what they want. The board back in 2014, if I recall, voted 5-2 to support the TIF.
Right, but what I'm saying is, like, they could close down the TIF,
They could.
and they could open a new one, then we vote, and
It would be a new TIF, it'd be probably TIF number 4.
Okay, I won't go into it
Yeah,
now,
okay.
but we do have a right to not participate,
Yeah,
is what I'm saying.
we'll definitely have a vote
Okay.
if there ever is a new TIF.
I'm a little confused. We just talked about the TIF doesn't really affect us. And yet, if there are children in the development, probably, the library would get some of that TIF money. We've already said that.
School districts and library,
It does
It affects
involve
us in terms of, we receive benefit,
Right.
but we don't have authority to enact
No, I
a
understand
TIF or
that.
dissolve a TIF.
Right. But it still, TIF money affects us.
Yep.
As it does the school district. Right. Okay, thanks.
So, unless others got I run it kind of.
Let Mark finish his
Yeah.
agenda. Let Mark has to say.
A2.
Yes. We're still on
I want
A1.
to check the boxes, village economic incentive review, that's ongoing right now, that's in the process. Plan unit development, nothing's been formalized there. My read on this is that the developer's not going to go back to the PDC or making a request until they have an understanding what the finances are. They don't want to make a decision on anything until they know that they can actually afford the project. So that's kind of a moot point for right now, but what I would expect is that, say, an village incentive gets agreed upon, or at least a framework for one, at that point they might go and look at making a formal submittal to the PZC. And that would be in the terms of a PUD, planned unit development. And what that would entail would be at least 2, if not 3, meetings with the PZC to explain the project. It'd be potentially a conceptual. And I know that they already went through kind of a pre-conceptual, but there's another process once they formalize an application. There'd be a conceptual meeting, they get feedback from the PZC, then they submit a preliminary plat, they get more feedback, and hopefully a recommendation to the board. The board make a final determination, and then they have to come back for a final plat with any final engineering. So that's there's at least 3 meetings there, 2 minimum, 3 ideally, more than likely, that they'd be going through the PUD process. So there's a couple of things that have to go on there, just to give you guys a little bit of clarity on what that step is. The other part of that, and it actually plays into the PUD process, is talking with the library potentially. So say it works out financially with the village, and they can still offer an incentive to the library for moving there, and it works out great, well then there's going to have to be a heck of a lot of discussions with you guys. Say, okay, what is the actual area that you want? And as you saw in the reports, they listed a range of 30,000 to 40,000 square feet. They don't know what the range is that actually is going to fit based on the constraints that they'll have in their actual building, the shape of it, the height of it, all those different factors. How many parking spots? The report I read this morning that was sent to the EDC listed something like 480 parking spots that the development could potentially have. There were some contradictory numbers in the backup data, but essentially it was over 200 spots available for public use or in excess of what they needed for their code-required residential properties. You currently have 130 locations here, spots. So what that consists of is 118 open spots, which I think are mixed between staff as well as public. 4 spots that are ADA spots and 8 spots that are quick turnover spots, short-term, things of that nature. So they have enough there. Now, how that split works out, I'm not sure. How the money works out, I'm not sure, but we'll get to that point once they know their village incentive. Yeah.
I agree that they upped the number of parking spaces. Does that change the number of units they're planning?
I'm just going based on that.
And what is that number of units? Do you
You can
know?
find it if you want it. I do have it right on top of my mind.
Not this minute,
Yeah,
but I would like to know.
yeah. It's a mixture of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, I'll say that much. I saw there was a 0 in front of studios, but it's a mixture of the 2.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else in that process? And so kind of 3 processes: library, EDC, which funnels up to the board, and PZC, which funnels up to the board. So really, it's dependent on the village at this point right now.
And we're talking about a couple of months of maybe wait time, so the village and Clarendon Counts can have those financial discussions.
Right.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, I would expect, they just come back to the EDC, which is going to take another round of back and forth. These are negotiations for high dollar values, so there's some back and forth. I would expect it, and they're public bodies, so they meet monthly, just like you guys. So they'll be coming back every month or so, hopefully, to finalize.
So are they coming back to that economic development group again next month?
We don't know for sure. That would be my guess at this point.
They did state that they were having a meeting in March, so.
As long as the financial analysis can be done by McKenna and it works out to continue discussions, I would expect that.
Okay.
Does that cover it?
2?
Other opportunities, just to recap. The McHale property is up for sale, we know that. I don't know if anything was verbalized at the EDC meeting or anything like that, but basically right now, someone has to go and buy that. And obviously you have been contacted by a few different developers when we first started discussions with you. So I think we probably reach after the fire.
What is that? It's called? Who is it?
McHale property, so it's a property directly to the east of Family Square. It's up for sale, free and clear. Now we know that means anyone could buy it, but you have to be able to build what you want on there without any incentive. So it's really not an option until a developer is interested and potentially interested with the library again.
And that property was mentioned at the EDC, so they were talking about all of the open opportunities downtown today at the EDC.
So there's that as well. And so I think we looked at, my recommendation is, okay, let's see what the 30 columns does. They're offering something that has a dollar tag associated with it. If that doesn't happen or it moves forward, then you reach back out to anyone else before making a final step. That's a quick phone call, a quick email, and going from there. But really at that point, that's where, and the other discussion was, I think, at the EDC again, was the parking. If there is a problem, if it's not a problem, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out with the village over the next month at the EDC level ideally.
Right, in my recap, we'll go over that. I think all three of us can speak to those conversations at the EDC today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good on that?
Yeah.
Any questions on A? All right, so B, we kind of touched already the 10th district funding high level, and that's, I think you did capture it pretty well, but this is the difference, that's the funding level that's used for bonding. So any questions on that, or anything that's I need to go into more detail on at this high level? All right. 2 would be kind of, I just want to regurgitate a little bit of the checklist for decision making and kind of give you guys, okay, check some boxes here. Number 1, do you have any critical projects that you have to do right now to maintain this building? And I think looking at the Frederick Quinn report, everything that was critical was taken care of. I know that you guys did do air handling unit replacement, so you're good there. There was another category that was a 2 to 5 year category that does start, you need to start thinking about that eventually, but it's not like today you have to make a decision and put some band-aids on it. So that to me is kind of checked for the time being while you're allowing maybe floating columns to go through the process over the next couple months. Funding, you've looked at that, you've got the reports, PMA and some of your internal reserves. You know that there are funding opportunities out there for capital improvement projects at whatever level that you decide. And then from there, you also know that there's no tax increases necessary to do a capital improvement project. That's a big one to know for you guys and to educate the public on as you're going through the process. There's no additional money coming out of taxpayer dollars to pay for anything you're currently considering. So to me, that box is checked until you decide, okay, I want to be in site A or site B. Right, that's kind of where you're at right now. Identify needs. You've done that. You've checked that box. You've done the facility condition assessment for Quinn. We've worked together with you guys to come up with spatial needs identification in that preliminary development report or definition report. You also had a full space needs analysis done a few years ago by Edinburgh Anderson. So that box is somewhat checked for now as well. So you're in a good spot. You've done a lot of the due diligence. The next bit is the timing. And it's really seeing if the board has a temperature, your board has a temperature to wait that month or 2 months or 3 months. I'd say probably somewhere in this 2 to 6 range, and that of trying to finalize this through EDC, through PZC, and through the village board. And really, what's the temperature on your end to say, okay, yeah, we want to go through this process, and we'll hold tight for a couple months and continue to have discussions with 13 columns and keep that project going in the background.
So maybe we should talk to the board about it.
Yeah, so is everybody still good with at least letting the process work out at the village level as far as, at least, especially this first stage of the funding, and see where that comes back? And, I would assume, depending through the negotiation process between the village and the developer, the funding or lack of funding might, make or break the deal and see if it goes to the next level. And then that's probably where it might become a little bit more of a decision-making process than for us. So is the board still agree to at least keep going, at least for another, I would say, just to play it safe, a couple more months, and then possibly longer than that?
I'm just commenting, I'm not saying yes or no. I don't know how far back, it's been 3 to 4 months. The board did make comments about putting a timeline on this. Trying to recollect when we first started talking about this. I know FQC presented in July. I think shortly thereafter, didn't this idea of the opportunity to move possibly come up around July, August, September?
Well,
I'm just trying to...
Okay, so when CCS presented in December, early December, that's when...
Well, it was the official.
The official...
We sent an email saying we were open.
Well, Flaherty County,
Right.
when CCS did their presentation, like that day before, Flaherty and Collins came with the letter or proposal, I guess you would call it. And then we were even thinking that wouldn't be vetted at the planning and zoning, the preliminary, or the conceptual plan until January, and it actually went pretty quick. It was actually a week or two later in December. So the way in my mind, I thought we were already a month ahead at that point. So now, we're in February, which I think in my opinion, when we were in December, I think we're still in that timeline, which is about right, so.
Well, there were
Yeah.
comments, I mean, I
Yeah.
could refer to the minutes.
Yeah.
I've just read those.
Do you want
right.
August minutes?
No, I mean, I
That's when we talked
just
about it.
refreshed my
Okay.
memory that we did indicate we wanted to set a timeline. I understand we have to understand about the funding. So are we still in agreement as a board, and maybe we defer this to another part of the agenda so we don't take up Mark's time?
I'm fine here.
As a board, are we still, do we want to discuss a timeline? Are we saying now, because we want to understand the funding, that we're going to wait till McKenna comes back with their analysis?
So and if you're asking me, and my recommendations, someone has come to the library and offered money. Whether it's going to come to fruition or not, you'll find out in the next two, 3 months, somewhere along those lines with EDC. That'd be my guess, because it's got to go to the EDC and the village, regardless of PDC and everything else. If someone's offering free money essentially, and it's not free to the developer, not free to the village, but free to the library, it doesn't hurt to hear that out, especially when there's not a need to say, today I need to do something. You know, if there's a need, if you have something falling apart in the building and we absolutely have to do it today, then I'd say you got to think about it a little harder. Now, setting a timeline, that's a little different discussion. I just don't know if you want to set a hard date, or if you want to say, okay, maybe the timeline is more process-based. It's like, okay, let's say the timeline is based on EDC. If EDC gives its approval to the village board, then we continue this until it gets to the board. If the board says yes to the village incentive, then you let it see what happens to the PDC. If those start coming back and no, there's your timeline. Now that option's off the table, and you transition to making a different decision for yourselves. I think that as long as there's money being offered at this time, and it's hard to turn money down.
I think that's reasonable, especially since there's other entities involved which we have no control over. So having like a process-based kind of checklist I think makes more sense for us, and obviously it wouldn't be open-ended forever, but since we should know within 3 to 6 months if there's any opportunity there. I think that's
I
reasonable.
think I was one of those people who talked about timeline, but I think when I look back at it, I wanted to just see movement. I didn't want 4 or 5 months of nothing. They've met my threshold of movement. They've now talked to the EDC, that process has started. Okay, now we can kind of start getting more data on this to make the most educated decision in the next 2 to 6 months, and then go from there. I just didn't want it to be, we had the presentation,
And nothing.
and then 5 months, nothing, and then they go to the EDC, and then we're stuck sitting here for another year. They've now shown that they're at least serious enough that they're exploring their options.
They've made two presentations to the village already. You know, the PCC, and I was at that one obviously, and sitting in the peanut gallery, and there really was no negative comment to say, don't do this. I wasn't at the EDC, but I know there's a funding gap right now. But you can let that analysis play out over the next month, really. By the time you have your next monthly board meeting, you should have some sense of what that feedback would be.
I saw the presentation to the P&Z. I'm not aware of another presentation.
PCC and EDC.
Yeah, this morning.
This morning was at 7:30 a.m.
They did not make that presentation.
No, sorry, the submittal. So their packet is actually in the board meeting minutes, not minutes, the agenda. So they
On the
actually
village
gave their
website.
On the village
So
packet.
Because it wasn't there last night, so did
Yeah,
they?
it wasn't there today either when I looked.
It's not there.
At lunch. There was just the agenda. There was
Just the-
nothing else in there.
No, there's not a packet from them.
There was no
Was it-
packet.
They had it at the meeting.
Okay, so could you hand us out oh,
I
you didn't
I
get
can
one
get a
either?
packet.
No.
They had them available on the counter at the meeting, but
No, I wish I would have known
Yeah.
that, but.
well,
I-
I didn't know until the end of the meeting either,
Oh,
so I picked one up, but I can scan it and send it to everybody.
That would be
Do you
great.
mind? That would be
Yeah,
great.
right.
That would be great.
Nope.
Yeah. So there's PCC packet as well as EDC packet. So you-
I've got the P&Z
Okay,
and I
okay.
saw that
Yeah, those are
presentation.
the two that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But to take the other side of the argument, and I'm just plain devil's advocate. and also being chair of the facilities committee. We addressed the critical issues, I understand that. And then we have the 2 to 5, but that could be the next 1 to 5, not 2 to 5.
And building off your point, Marjorie, if we go back
Yeah,
over
I mean,
the project timeline, from the time that we start the project
Right.
until finish is upwards of 24 months or more.
You know, I think
according to
one of-
this. So
I'm
now
sorry,
I'm just pivoting off of you and saying, then it does get us into the next round of facility
One of-
improvements that are needed here.
Let it finish. Yeah.
Well, I just think, lost my thought, to be honest with you. Go
You
ahead.
said it went from one to 5 to 2 to 5.
Right, 1 to 5 years. Having been on the board 3 years and coming to meetings before I was a board member, and then when we took office, people that are up next year, there were a lot of comments about the previous board, and I'm not putting blame on anyone. Don't misunderstand me. A lot of criticism that the previous board just kept passing the buck, so to speak. Whether it's warranted or not, I don't know. And some of the repairs that needed to be made to this facility became critical because they were not addressed. Okay, so the last thing I would like to see on the facilities committee is for that to happen again while we are waiting to make up our minds what we want to do. I'm not saying that will happen, but that is a big concern to me, just putting it out there. Okay, that's
Can I
it.
make a recommendation, just on something, I think, and this might help. I think what I'm hearing right now is there's some trepidation, as it was with the developers, of we don't want to just sit here and sit still. One of the things we can start looking at over the next month or so is putting together a checklist of, okay, what does a board need to do for a project no matter what? You're going to need to hire other consultants, like an architect or an engineer, right? And that doesn't happen overnight. You can see that on that sheet. There's a process in that. What we can start to do is, and what CCS would want to do with the board, is start getting your input on what level of input into that process you want. Because obviously, you know, if you're doing something out of a public RFP issue, you might get 20 back, you might get 10 back, whatever else, and you're not gonna, the board's not gonna sit down and interview 20 different firms and everything else. So what we could do to start maybe making this process go a little bit, at least be prepared for that next step, is start talking to you guys about, okay, what do you want that process to be like? Maybe the next meeting or two, a month or two from now, if it fits the timeline, you can start having some input into that process. That way, when the bell tolls and you have to move somewhere, you're ready to make that decision. We're not spending a month just going, what do we do next? Or what input do you want? That might be something that at least buys some time and then buys some movement into you.
I like that idea, and to Marjorie's point regarding the critical, we've done the major critical,
Yes,
but at our last physical plant meeting, we also talked about the drainage, which I think is in that next step, and we're going to be budgeting for that, so make sure that we have some remediation there with our drainage. The ups for the technology, we're already seeking, we're talking to vendors about quotes for that, and there was a third thing we were looking at regarding another kind of 2 to 5 year project. So
Maybe
we
the
are
paging?
Say it
The
again?
paging?
Exactly, the paging system. So those are the 3 that we're actively looking at, and that's a 2 to 5 years. So we're not gonna let that go, and I know you're not gonna let that go. So.
Trustee Swiss. I've
been very quiet this evening. Just been taking it all in. I agree that with what Mark said about, you know, doing something so that we are moving forward and that we're prepared down the line for what's going to happen. I don't want to sit stagnant and not have anything happening. It's like you don't want to get stuck in a catch-22 either, though, right? About are we going to move? Are we going to stay? What's going to happen? And just waiting. So I feel like we do need to be proactive in doing something that we can do on our ends to continue moving along while we're waiting to see what happens and what comes back from the village.
Just the last thing is that I did supply the board with a continuing owner's representation services because the question was asked regarding the rates for CCS, and so just for the next, few months, as we discuss and wait and maybe have another meeting, I think we should move forward with continuing our discussions with CCS.
Well, I don't know, I was gonna just to finish up around the horn here.
Oh.
You're-
I'm covered with what I chimed in
Okay.
with and
Okay.
agreeing with the general consensus
Okay.
of what's been said.
Trustee Larson, you're still.
I mean, let's wait and see what
Okay.
they do with the study,
Okay.
for the TIF. I don't know,
Then take it from there, pretty much.
we'll see.
Trustee Sullivan?
I've been out talking to people. I'll just share with you, I have yet to find one person who wants the library to move, especially the people with children.
Well, that's not what I'm hearing from people that have young children, because just today at the Park District, moms were talking to me about, I heard that the library might move downtown, I would love that, and so, I mean, I'm hearing the opposite around the preschool
Yeah, we're
moms,
talking to
so.
different people, so we're getting different. And Beth, I had a question for you. You know how, like right now, we do things outside sometimes in the parking lot? And I'm wondering, from what we understand, our parking downtown would be in a multi-level parking garage. Is there a way we could still do those outdoor events in a multi-level parking garage?
We wouldn't do it in a parking garage, we would block a street perhaps.
Yeah, so I think what the idea would be
The car
is
shows.
You could either block the streets, or there's the museum park there, the museum campus would be to utilize that as their open space, because in my opinion, that's a very underutilized piece of property. I know they do. Resource. I know they do depot days and Lights of Lisle on Christmas, and I think there's one other event they do.
Garden Gate.
Garden Gate, and then, I mean, they have their museum that they do the book author series there, but I mean, by and large, it's really an underutilized piece of property. So, I mean, we probably need an intergovernmental agreement, which I don't think would be a problem with the park district. But the idea would be either use that park, and actually to maybe help bring that museum campus to life, or block one of the streets, because if you look just south of where we're being proposed as of now to move, Spencer Street basically that runs parallel to the fire station is blocked off, so that would be an option, which would really not even.
So we're trading green space for zero space.
What do you mean?
We're trading zero setback for no green space. For our own green space, which we already have here.
But we really don't utilize our green, you talking about the 2 vacant lots?
Well,
The retention pond?
Or the retention, right?
no, I
Yeah.
mean, like you have the parking, like when you guys have the events, you can use the parking lot. You
Sure,
have
sure,
to-
but what we'll do is we'll either, like I said, utilize a street, block it off, or use the museum campus, their park. I mean, I would
I
probably
mean,
think
I
people
know
would want
there's
to.
other avenues.
Oh, sure,
that you
sure.
can, but
Yeah.
I mean, there's trade-offs.
I mean, there's
How many events do you have out in your parking lot right now? 1 or 2 a year?
about two,
Is that right or no?
it's two.
It could be 3,
Two
but
events
2,
outside.
generally, yeah, traditionally.
I would think you maybe, as a board,
Yeah.
okay, how many events do we have and what's the feasibility of doing something around that property if that's the path we want to go down?
And it probably actually possibly increase the events outside.
Could.
Because you'd always utilize the museum buildings if there's room or something too.
The other thing I wanted to say is, I, like Trustee Bartelli, went to a lot of meetings before, these board meetings before I was elected. And there were many parents who came in, and at that point, which was probably 4.5 years ago, said that we needed things like bathrooms upstairs. We needed, and there were people who had disabilities who said we needed bigger bathrooms even downstairs. I talked to a woman just today who had a husband who had Parkinson's, who she wanted to be able to go into the bathroom with her husband. He could not go in alone, and she would have liked to have had a bathroom, a family bathroom. And she also there's multiple people who have told me that our building's not ADA compliant, and as a library, that's been known for multiple years, and as a library, I would hope that we would be a leader, not a laggard in that way. So, as much as it doesn't seem like we're doing any harm not to make these changes now, these are changes that our constituency has been asking for, actually coming to meetings and talking about. And I don't know how you all feel about coming to meetings, but it's really hard if, to come to a meeting and speak, and you've got your time, you've got your family, like look at tonight, it's snowing out. And these people have been bringing up these issues for over 5 years, and since they're not coming anymore because they've fallen on deaf ears. We've had people, I remember, and I know we didn't videotape the meetings back there, but there was a man who was almost crying because his kid, who was 3 years old, peed himself because he couldn't get him down here in time to the bathroom because there's no public bathroom upstairs. Now, I feel for these people who have been asking for change for that long and haven't gotten it. And they're telling me, you know what? I now go to Downers Grove. You know what? I now go to Naperville. You know what? I now go here. So if we really want to serve our community, and my suggestion is for everybody to think, how long do we want to let this decision go? And in my opinion, we should put on our next meeting agenda a vote as to how long do we want to let this decision go. Do we want to let it go 2 months? Do we want to let it go 6 months? Because we are never going to have perfect information. And we were, President Hummel, this is from August, was asking board members if they remain open to exploring a downtown concept, as well as investigating improving the current campus facility. That's August, and we were talking at that time, talking about making a decision by 6 months, which would have been this month. So I don't want to be a party to the board who has been ignoring what our people have been asking for years and years and years.
Well, we've done a lot of work. We fixed the elevator. We just did some of the universal design in the bathrooms with the sink counters here recently. So we're doing.
Why did we fix the?
But my point is.
Wait a minute. Your point. Be clear. We fixed that elevator because it was totally broken.
It was still functional. It was at the end of its life, no doubt about it.
We had to put somebody here so that somebody could release somebody who got stuck.
If they got stuck, but
that's pretty sad.
I understand, but we've done some stuff, and either way, a bathroom upstairs in youth services is not going to be built tomorrow. It's still going to take some time.
So delay it.
We're not delaying anything. We are going to. I think we should keep it open to. We might wind up still staying here, or we might move downtown. We'll have to make that decision at some point. But I think the point in front of us right now is just to at least keep it going. The developer is now here on the table, at least at the village level. So let's let that process, at least the first phase of that process, work out. The first phase might be the end of the road for the developer, for all we know. We don't. I read. We come too far to pull the plug on it now. Is my point.
So what is your objection to putting a vote, letting everybody go home and think about how many months do we want this to go on, and putting on the agenda next month a vote as to how many months we want this to go on?
I don't know if we need a vote. We could just do like how we've been doing the last, even going back to August, we could just keep asking, do we still want to go down this? And if the majority of the board says, no, I want to pull the plug on it, then we'll pull the plug on it. But I think we still have a majority of the board that wants to keep pursuing this, at least to the next phase. That's right. Now, we could ask the same question next month, especially if if the financial comes back to the village. We'll have more information hopefully by then. So,
I think
go
that
ahead, Trustee Duffy.
being new to the board, and I am not gonna listen to it. It's a lot of decisions over decades got us to this point. This is no, but I think, as Mark, you've outlined, we have a unique opportunity in front of us that at least should get the full vetting of it. I don't know, for example, if a downtown move is appropriate or not. There's still information that needs to be gathered. But I look at it as I don't want to just, I know we got to meet the needs of the community now, but we have to think the next 20, 30 years. And this is just the opportunity that we have that we're presenting, which we have made movement. I think the movement may feel slow, and trust me, I feel that too. But, over these next 2 to 4 months, we're going to have reached that nexus point. We're going to have to make this decision. We're going to have that data onto the financing, and that'll be the clear separating factor of how the village is going to take this. And the village says no, then we have to turn around right away and say, what are we going to do in this current space? And if we do what you offered up, Mark, which I think was a good point, which is we get some of this stuff going already, we are not waiting around. And if the village does turn around and go and they come to an agreement, well, then we have to have the discussion about the downtown and then what information, how we feel about it. But at least we've moved forward and we've vetted that unique opportunity that will not come around very often, especially as you put it, the developer, in theory, is giving you money to just think about it. It's not something that happens often, so we have to at least vet that. I think that data point on the financing is now the next critical piece.
All right. Thank you. So that was very well said. So are we, so we're still good with that. The next item with the CCS is this continuing owner's rep. Did you want to add anything to this? Or?
I mean, I think that if the board is okay with moving forward with CCS, because I think they've done good work for us, and keeping with them at an hourly rate per direction, I think that's...
And this was emailed to the board last week, 2 weeks ago?
With the board packet.
Yeah, it's a board pack too. So are we good with this? And this is just to keep...
Continue with CCS.
The CCS.
At the hourly rate. It's the original rate. Yeah.
Ron doesn't charge us with TIF discussions.
We don't charge, right? Yeah. We don't do like attorney vote every 6 months. Try to charge us? Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, next item on the agenda are staff reports. The first one is director reports. Before I open it up to questions or comments, you had some stuff.
Well, because there's additional things that aren't in my report, I'll just go over, well, just to mention that the president and I attended the intergovernmental meeting. And if you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer. I did attend the joint review board. And at that joint review board, they're very short meetings. There's 3 TIFs, and each meeting's about 5 minutes long, because basically you go over the minutes of the previous year's meetings. But at the last TIF, the mayor did mention the downtown TIF, and I already mentioned that the library is an advisory member of this board, but we don't have any ultimate authority regarding any TIF. But the mayor did mention that after 7 years, the TIF automatically dissolves, and they confirmed that with the TIF consultants. So I believe the downtown TIF is in its 5th year. So unless anything comes to fruition regarding development, that TIF will dissolve. Let's see.
Well, by law, it would dissolve.
Yes.
In the setbacks after 7 years.
Will Savage and I met with the DuPage Pistol Shrimp owner, general manager, and sales executive, so we look forward to doing some fun stuff this summer with that organization. Beth and I went to the ILA legislative meetup, and that information is in the packet. And then I just wanted to say out loud a little bit about Census 2020. So April 1st is Census Day, and in March, our residents will start receiving some notifications about filling out the census, and The library has obviously public computers, Wi-Fi, and then our librarians have been trained to assist people with their online access and helping them fill out the forms. And we expect to see some new visitors in our library because of the census. We have information on our website. If you go to the services drop-down menu, it will say Census 2020, and you click on there. The village is also linking to us via their website because we've got some information there. There's a link also from the ALA that provides a citizen's guide to the Census 2020. It's in your packet, but it's a very great guide. And so we're really pushing for everyone to fill out the census from the library perspective, the village perspective, and then just today the township connected with me and they're going to point people to the library. So we do anticipate a lot of folks seeking our assistance in filling out the census. And why is this important? Because we do this once every 10 years and we want to make sure that Lisle is counted, and that means we get federal funding, state funding, local funding regarding our population. And it's not only about funding, but it's also for our planning. So when we do our budgets and our levies, we need to know how many people we are serving within our district. So that's why we're doing that. So everything's on the Lisle Library website under the services link. And then I had a little piece about our district and the zones, 7 zones in our district. The map of the districts in the packet, and then there's also some graphs there that talk about total household distribution throughout our district regarding card holders. So originally, when we ran our ILS data, we saw that the Meadows had a low number of households with cards. And that was like that number. And so we thought that was like, oh, the Meadows, they're having troubles. But that's not true. So after running our ILS and then overlaying that onto our GIS analytics software, we can see that the percentage of card holders per household unit across all our districts, and actually the Meadows did quite well. So each zone in our district has a specific number of households, and then per that total, we can see that percentage of card holding homes, okay? So the Meadows shows that very healthy percentage of card holders, and they're at 63%. They're actually at the highest level in terms of all 7 zones. So good for the Meadows. And then, yeah. So right under there is Steeple Run and Oak Hill, and then right under that group is Green Trails, then Oakview, then Beaubien, and then 4 Lakes, and then North Warrenville. So what I think we can glean from this data is that we need to better target some of the lower percentage areas, such as 4 Lakes, because they have the highest number of households. And I know that a lot of them are renters, but I think we should target 4 Lakes, Beaubien, and possibly North Warrenville, even though they have the lowest total households. I think we should brainstorm with our department heads and our communications coordinator to start targeting those areas. I do want to mention, though, that the actual number of cards I don't believe is as relevant as our door count and people who walk through our building, attend our programs, as well as our circulation numbers for our materials. So those numbers of people coming in to utilize our materials within the building or check out materials, I think that's a more telling number than just number of cards, because as we've discussed before, one household can have 1 card and there might be 5 users on that card. Children, parents, seniors, grandparents. So the number of cards is a good tool, a good number for us, but it really is utilization. I think that's our better number. And then we can have another discussion or report about circulation trends in the library, programming trends. We have a statistical report in our board packet every month, but last year I presented like a circulation trends report. I'd be happy to do that again. I think it's worthwhile to do every year, to take a look at how people are utilizing our building, utilizing our materials, utilizing our services. So that's that on that piece. I have been forwarding the board articles. I just wanted to know if everybody's appreciating them. Do they like them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Keep that going.
Keep them going.
Okay.
I have a question about your graph.
Okay.
We know that people with children will probably continue to visit the library. And we know that people are increasing using services online and downloading. Is there a way somehow, and I don't know how to do this because the systems are not interconnected at this point, but is there a way to somehow take a look at how the library serves its people, kind of from circulation, plus from visiting, plus from electronics?
Those numbers were in that circulations trends report. I would like to reconfigure it to make it a little more clear, but those three data points were shown in that report, but
Perfect.
we'll do that again.
Great,
We'll do that
thank
again. And then just lastly, I have some Economic Development Commission notes. President Hummel, Vice President Bartelli, and I attended that meeting this morning. We were in the peanut gallery, so I did take some notes, and I want you to fill in the blanks if I miss anything. So, and Mark has mentioned this because I know he spoke with the village. So Flarion Collins was asked to provide more detailed financial information. The TIF consultant reviewed it, and there's preliminary numbers, as Mark mentioned, and there's a need for further consultation regarding all of the financials because of this financial gap. So that's been discussed. They did mention that Flarion Collins is working within a TIF area in Batavia, doing a public-private partnership. That was mentioned. There were some questions posed to the library, even though we were in the peanut gallery. So we were asked how many total parking spots we have. And so, as Mark mentioned, we have a total of 130 spots, and that is broken down by 96 general patron spots, 21 staff or employee spots, 5 for handicapped, 8 for low mobility or quick drop-off areas, and that adds up to 130. We were also asked by one of the commissioners what would happen to the current library property if we relocated to the downtown. So I did mention that the library has not made any decisions about moving downtown. We are here to learn and gain more information. But if we were to relocate, obviously this property would be empty and available for sale. Okay. And let's see. The village or the PZC is looking at parking code in other communities, so they're reevaluating parking requirements. Someone mentioned Mark on Main and that the parking is becoming an issue.
Yeah, if it's not an
there.
issue, it's becoming an issue.
And then my other note says, so another commissioner mentioned having a broader discussion about parking within the village in general, and mentioned solving the problem. And I think the phrase that was used was like chicken and the egg. So do we have a problem? Do we not have a problem? If there are empty restaurant fronts, I don't know, help me out here. There were
just saying like the chicken and egg, like, because it was after about one of the last village board meetings, there was a perception that it was said there's not enough parking to bring in, I think it was a tap room was the example they were using. So does that mean you don't bring in a tap room or a restaurant because you don't have parking, or do you do parking first hoping that you get a restaurant? So
right.
It was.
So do you develop a parking solution?
I thought it was more about changing the zoning codes for those types of establishments.
Well, then there's
Correct,
two
it's not so much about parking and zoning.
The planning, the village is doing a separate project where they're redoing the whole codes.
Right.
They're looking at parking requirements in other communities.
Correct.
Yes.
That's for sure.
They met the minimum requirement, so that's how they can force it the minimum. They can't force them to do more. Mm-hmm. And because Mark on Main, they thought they were going to get millennials, so they wouldn't have that many cars. The minimum that they thought would be more than sufficient, but they've gotten a lot of empty nesters who have 2 cars. So even I think they're at 80% full. They're already getting a crunch for just their residents, so let alone whatever they do start filling off the bottom. So that's why I think the village is going to start looking at the parking codes for those types of developments.
But in terms of solving the parking problem, everything in quotes here. they were talking about, does the village move forward with initiating the solution for parking? So does the village look to solve the parking by either building a deck or having open air parking? Or do we not have a problem? I mean, so I think this was the first time I heard in an open meeting where solving the problem actually got brought up.
And I know it was also mentioned by one of the, or a couple of commissioners too, is, for example, a restaurant figuring it'd be busier like at night and on the weekends, the commuter lots are available. So it's
Well, there's land available at the Garfield Avenue area that the
that
village
was
owns.
mentioned, that was mentioned to
There's
the
2 or 3
Garfield.
lots.
Yeah,
that the
that was
village
mentioned
owns.
too, yeah.
So that would be surface
Yeah.
parking.
The Garfield behind the Main Street.
Garfield,
west of Main
behind-
Street.
Yeah, I know what you're
Yeah.
talking about. I'm just
All right.
mentioning what
Yeah.
the commissioners
Well, I know.
mentioned.
So the parking was discussed, so.
So parking, and then
Yeah.
the village manager mentioned the TIF dissolving if no development was initiated within 2 years. Then there was discussion about technology companies moving into the office buildings on Warrenville Road, and then there was some discussion about the consequences of negative social media posts about Lisle regarding developers being interested in doing business here, and then they set their meeting for March 18th. Did I miss anything?
I did.
Do you have any notes you want to add? That's all I have.
Any questions or comments on the director's report? Trustee Duffy.
I had 2 quick questions. Well, actually, one, it wasn't covered in here, but it's something that was interesting. I had it's actually a neighbor who, Disney planner, tried to set up for the rewards program and couldn't because they're not Disney.
A what planner?
They're a Disney planner, like these scheduled trips. So they're a small business owner, but they can't sign up for the rewards program because the only company that can sign up is Disney. And it got me thinking of people that sell, like, I have these all little small business niches that are local. They may get blocked from signing up for the rewards program for our library because the vendor won't allow that individual to sign up, but the actual company, because they're kind of I only bring it up because that was a really unique way, because it was a perfect opportunity for this individual to sign up because, hey, families use this, it's a local person, and right now they can't get in there, and I would have thought if, I bring it up, it's just something that popped up recently, so, I mean, I probably didn't have time to email you.
If they're
so.
amenable, if you can forward them.
Oh, I will forward
Okay,
everything to you.
yeah.
Probably
Because
send my
maybe
draft.
that's something that we can discuss with the vendor. I don't know if that's something in their fine print regarding.
Yeah, I definitely didn't know that either.
And corporate copyright is.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it was
it's
in one
like,
of the
what are you
big ones.
actually, like, are you a subcontractor?
Yeah.
So
Right.
that was,
Yeah.
and I think back to your comment about the library cards, I agree, but I also kind of think it's a good metric if, at least if you get them signed up, that's the first step, right?
Absolutely.
Like, that's like, you know, a wellness program, get them signed up first, and then, you know.
And then
But,
don't.
I mean,
Yeah, then you at least
exactly.
get them, you get some data and you can kind of engage with them in a different way.
Yeah.
I just want to make that simple, I don't want to.
Absolutely. I mean, that's in our strategic plan. We have an awareness bucket. We're going to continue to completely promote library cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments on the director's report?
Just one comment, there was an October 2018 parking study done for the village. If anybody wants that link, send me an email and I will send you the link to that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Assistant director's report. Anything there, or just want me to open up the questions and comments? Any questions, comments on the assistant director's report? Trustee Bartelli.
On the roof inspection, have all the repairs been completed as a result of that inspection?
As a result of the inspection, yes, all of the repairs have been done.
Okay, that's one, thank you. Let's see, the second paragraph under air handlers replacement project, Johnson Controls, the status, it said it should be done by the end of February. Is that still on schedule?
Yes, I talked with their sort of planning technician, and they've drawn up their plans to because it is fire safety. They have to submit plans
Okay.
to what they call the FSCI, and that's Fire Safety Consultants. And so the plans are now there to be reviewed, and it should be just a couple days. I expect Johnson Controls will have the approval to go
Okay.
forward.
And the water heater.
The water heater was done yesterday.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the Assistant Director? Right. The next, actually, two agenda items are related. It's a semi-annual review of executive session minutes and recordings. If the board's okay, you want me to just do number 10 first, and then we can come back around since. Okay, so we'll just go alphabetical. Vice President Bartelli.
No, I don't know.
Comment, okay. Trustee Duffy.
Nothing for me.
Nothing tonight.
I'm not gonna talk about bathrooms.
I have nothing. Trustee Larson.
No.
Nothing. Treasurer Norton.
No.
Nothing. Trustee Sullivan.
I just want to thank Tatiana for her flexibility whenever I have been requesting for things to be changed or altered, or can you do this, or I had all those questions I sent you this week. And you were you could have said, hey, get with the program, you just didn't read this right, but instead you carefully explained it without calling me out and saying, you missed the boat. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So this is item 10.
Secretary Swistak.
Yeah, we're on.
I want to change my.
Oh, you.
Jenny wanted to talk.
I'll swing back around. Secretary Swistak.
Okay, I just wanted to mention again how much my youngest is enjoying the Saturday programming, because it's really hard for us to come during the week now. So he just was here this past Saturday. It was a science, it was like a edible experiments or something. He had a lot of fun. So that was nice. And then we are looking forward to Harry Potter Day coming up on March 7th. Yay. Okay.
All right, now Treasurer Norton again.
All right, thank you. No, I just wanted to say that a thought that's bubbling up from the conversations that we've been having about the passage of time and us wanting to feel like we're moving forward on things, coinciding with the last time that we did a community engagement survey, which is going on 2.5 years. I believe it was fall of 17, the last survey. And I just feel like, if trustees individually are getting individual feedback, that's good, but that seems like a harder, not smarter way to get real timely feedback on these bigger questions. I mean, it's obviously our decision, staff input's good, owner's rep helpful, but I think it might be a good time to revisit doing a community-wide survey about these topics that we're now getting close to making decisions on.
When was that finished?
2017.
November? Yeah, but November of 2017. I know it started. It was a multi-month process. Okay. So the next time we got to go into executive session to just discuss and semi-annual review of executive session minutes and recordings. So if get it.
Motion.
Yeah, can I get a
I
motion?
move to go into an executive session under 5 ILCS 120/2C21, discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed under this act, whether for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by section 2.06.
I second.
Roll call?
Emily Swistak.
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Aye.
Thomas Duffy.
Aye.
Karen Larson. Aye. Jenny Norton.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye. All right, we're going to go into executive session at 8:20. It shouldn't take too long. If visitors could step out, and then we'll bring you back in when we vote. We are now back in session at 8:32. All right.
Yes.
Can I get a motion to approve 8A? First, we'll just do the semi-annual review of executive session. Just announce which one.
I move to release the executive session minutes from August 14th, 2019.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or discussion? Roll call, please.
Thomas Duffy.
Aye.
Karen Larson.
Aye.
Jenny Norton,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan,
Aye.
Emily Swistay,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye, motion passes. Next item is 8B, review or approval of executive session recordings more than 18 months old.
I move to destroy the executive session destroy, did I say that? Executive session recordings from February 14th, 2018 and August 8th, 2018.
Second.
Motion and second. Any comments, questions, discussion? Just for the public record, those are basically just executive session minute reviews that we're doing. Roll call.
Karen Larson,
Aye.
Jenny Norton,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan,
Aye.
Emily Swistay,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Thomas Duffy,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye, motion passes. Next item is adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Who's second? Jenny? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 8:34.